Sindhu. He's taking that from the beginning of the Bhagavatam, that Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yuto Bhaktir Doksite. That because in the Bhagavatam it says that real Parabhakti or Paradharma, meaning the highest form of devotion or activity of the living entity, is Yato Bhaktir Doksite. And then he defines what is that bhakti. Ahaitukya Pratyata. No motivations, nothing to gain from it other than pleasing Krishna, and that is our only motivation. And Yapatyata, that there's no deterrent, there's nothing that can stop that devotion from manifesting. So this is Rupa Goswami, and he speaks that verse and then he explains it in so many other verses. What is pure devotional service? So we should understand when we begin to study nectar devotion, that unless one is willing to perform devotional service unflinchingly and without any interruptions, then nectar devotion will simply be theoretical. Because it begins, the very beginning, very beginning is that devotional service, its nature is free from all material interferences or material influence. So this is very important. Otherwise, we have to understand what we have here. What is this process of Krishna consciousness? What is this deity, Shri Radha Gopina? Which is why I chose to sing Jaya Radha Madhava, which I usually don't sing at night. But because Jaya Radha Madhava is Bhakti Rasamrita singing. Krishna is known as the Akila Rasamrita Murti. Akila means universal, Rasamrita, the nectarian fountainhead of all blissful rasa, the manifestation of the nectarian universal taste of loving devotion. So this is Krishna. So when we see Shri Radha Gopina, then we should think Jaya Radha Bhanava Punya Vihari, that here is Krishna, and Krishna is so beautiful that what is the use of doing anything else in this world other than serving? This is, if we want to understand nectar devotion, we have to understand how does Rupa Goswami begin this nectarian work, and what is it that we're actually doing here? What are we supposed to be doing? We're developing love of God, just like we just repeated that Namo Maha Bhavanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. It is said of Rupa Goswami that Rupa Goswami is distributing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is distributing the highest Krishna Prema to everyone. But that means that once we get it and once we understand what we're getting, just like in a court of law, even though it may not be true of material nature, but in a court of law, one may be able to say, well, I didn't know that that I was doing something wrong. So we may also say, well, I didn't know that the purpose of devotional service or that the way you perform it is in the form of pure devotion. But now we know. So therefore there's no excuse. Therefore, that's what I began to say, that we have to understand what we have here. What is this Krishna consciousness? It means it is the highest expression of loving sentiment. It is the highest activity, as the Bhagavatam says. It is the most perfect Prakyaksha Bhagavan Dharanyam. As Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, it is the direct manifestation of Dharma. This Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, the greatest, most confidential secret. And that's talking about Gita, which is actually simply an introduction to nectar of devotion. Otherwise, Gita, even the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, according to the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, even Sarvadhamam Parichaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja doesn't even make it into the category of the topmost manifestation. It doesn't even come into the category. Otherwise, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established the category of pure devotion begins with Jnane Prayasam Udarapasta Namanta Eva. That once we completely give up the idea of knowledge or cultivating anything other than devotion, if we go beyond knowledge, beyond anything that we acquire in this material world. So Sarvadhamam Parichajam Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So it indicates pure devotion. But there's also the possibility of some upadharma, or some subcategories of dharma to creep into that. But the part of Bhagavad Gita that actually speaks about pure devotion is the beginning and the end of the 12th chapter, and the 9th chapter and 18th chapter. Manmana bhavamad bhakta mam yaji mam namaskuru mami vaishasi prayam atmanam parayanaha. That you surrender to Krishna, you always think of Krishna, you always worship Krishna, and you always offer everything to Krishna. So, but even this, and mam yukta, will always be united with Krishna. But even that can be considered to be in the category of Vaidhi Bhakti. Whereas real, pure devotional service is actually Raganuga Bhakti. Although Vaidhi Bhakti can also be pure devotional service, but it's actually more in the mood of Vaikuntha than in the mood of Vrindavan. So the nectar devotion emphasizes the mood of Vrindavan. But of course we can't rush into the mood of Vrindavan, therefore Rupa Goswami begins the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by establishing the basis, the basic elements, the foundation of devotional service, which is that we chant carefully, we avoid offenses, we dedicate ourselves, we try to understand what is the nature of pure devotion, all these basic things which Rupa Goswami gives in the first chapter. And then he goes on to explain the real essence, which is Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, this ocean of nectar. Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction to the nectar devotion, at first he emphasizes Amrita, Bhakti Rasa Amrita, as meaning eternal, because Amrita has two meanings, or two basic meanings. One is Amrita, without death, or eternal. And Amrita means that if you're eternal, if you're situated in eternality, it must be blissful. So therefore Amrita means nectar. Or once one achieves that Amrita, or deathless position, one must be experiencing nectar. Otherwise you can't maintain it. And this is the whole essence of the word rasa. Srila Prabhupada goes into great length in his introduction to the nectar devotion by first explaining bhakti, devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada says that everyone must perform service in this world. And every living entity must perform service in any world. But of course this is the world we're having experience of right now. So we see everyone is performing some service. And there is an impetus to do that service. Otherwise some people commit suicide. They don't perform service, they commit suicide. So why do they commit suicide? Because they have no impetus to serve. Otherwise they become so hopeless that they have no desire to serve. Otherwise they're experiencing so much pain from the material body, so much pain and agony from some emotional or sentimental disturbance, that they cannot come to the path, because the impetus to live, according to Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the nectar devotion, is that